pick up as you work. If you clean while you work, you put things away while you work, you become more efficient and you spend less time. It's like when your room gets messy, right? If you just put stuff away when you're using it, you don't have to spend your whole Sunday cleaning up your room and putting everything back. What's up, guys? This is coffee break number 17. We got a bunch of questions and I'm gonna fire off a few real quick. What brand polo shirt is this? This is a comfortably collared. Get it on Amazon, they're fitted, they make me look buff. That's why I bought them. Then someone asked, have I ever worked with hempcrete? No, but I think you guys sent me some samples, so I appreciate it. Someone also asked what builder in Melbourne, Australia that I always refer to, McKim, and also the local project on Instagram. McKim is the builder, the local project features a bunch of builders. That's probably how I found out about McKim. But if you want to see amazing modern architecture on a regular basis, it's literally the first thing I look at on Instagram every morning. Local project uploads a slideshow of another house. They have some awesome homes. So let's get into some real questions here. Well, I guess those are real questions, but I was just basically saying I look buff in my shirt. All right, here's one. I was wondering how you manage tools, materials, and installment fixtures on sites. Also protecting finished surfaces and keeping sites clean and organized. Do you have a specialized person? Is the site foreman who delegates this to a couple of your in-house tradesmen? It's a constant challenge for me, and all the sites are different, but I'm trying to come up with an economical and efficient system. It eats time, and standardizing a process would be great. We clean up every day as much as possible, but sometimes it gets crazy with fine materials, rough materials, fixtures like tubs or vanities that are waiting to be installed. Do a show on that, please. Maybe we'll do a show on it, but I'll answer your question. So that job site safety, cleanliness, health, all of that's super big for us, and it's something that I'm constantly on top of. And I do, there's part of me that says I'm joking, but the other part of me is very serious, is that when you're on site, pretend that the homeowner is going to check in every day at 10:30 in the morning, right after coffee break. Does the site look clean? And I don't mean that you got to be sweeping and cleaning up every single thing, but if you cut something, pick up your scrap and throw it in a 55-gallon bucket. I mean, I don't know why I specifically called out a 55-gallon bucket. Maybe it's a 25-gallon bucket. But just pick up pick up as you work. I've always learned that, if you clean while you work, you put things away while you work, you become more efficient and you spend less time, because it's like when your room gets messy, right? If you just put stuff away when you're using it, you don't have to spend your whole Sunday cleaning up your room and putting everything back, because it's spread out in these little micro portions of time. So that's really big. But as far as how we approach that and dedicate people to it in job site cleanliness, we have an allowance built into our general conditions on our budget sheet, saying, hey, this is a general labor allowance that we're gonna, maybe the apprentice or the laborer or maybe even the lead's gonna, bill against that, so they're not billing against our framing or finished carpentry allowance because they're doing overall job site cleanliness or organization. Maybe it's Friday and it's just a little bit too messy to leave for the weekend. That's an absolute must, by the way. Fridays, half hour before day's end, everyone stops, cleans up. Homeowners are gonna be there on the weekend. They're gonna be walking their friends through it. Make that place look clean and neat and organized. You want them to say, man, this place is clean. Because if they walk in and be like, man, this place is a mess, negativity sticks around way more than positivity. And if you can just always have them coming out, seeing how neat and organized it is, that's going to go a long way, because it's going to be repeated. So to answer your question, yeah, it's just our process. We want to make sure we're neat. We want to make sure we're organized. We're making sure that, especially going into a weekend, that we spend the extra time to get in there and organize and clean and prep for it. But we're dedicating a budget allowance in our budget for that. Now, maybe a smaller project, you can't do that, and it just has to be kind of spread out amongst everything. One thing that I think we've talked about on The Modern Craftsman is that if every trade should be cleaning up after themselves. And maybe it's just a conversation like, hey, listen, you're gonna do the electrical, I'm gonna pick on electricians, because I feel like they always leave a mess. And I know a bunch of you guys are gonna give me crap for that. But set that from the beginning, hey, listen, I know you're giving me a number. I just want to let you know, I expect you to clean up. But if you're setting the expectation up front and they're cleaning up, the next guy behind them is also going to clean up. But it's also on you as the GC, as the builder, as the carpenter, as the laborer. You see a mess, grab a broom, clean it up. If you're not doing something, grab a broom, clean it up. just always be cleaning up. And if the job site's always clean, people are going to want to keep the job site clean. If the job site's always a mess, then man, like everyone's going to just, you know, make a mess of it. I'm actually reading a great book right now, and it talks about, I believe it's Scaling Up Excellence. And in that book, it actually talks about negative behavior. And I think about, and one of the references, and I think this is a great example and relatable to job site cleanliness, is that when there's say there's an abandoned house in a neighborhood, and all the windows are like, I'm sorry, there's an abandoned house and a window has a rock thrown through it. Well, the chances of someone else picking up a rock and throwing another one through it is higher because it's already damaged. It's already in that state. So it's like, well, it's already broken, so I can throw a rock through it. And then it becomes this house that just all the windows get smashed out because it was kind of like okay that it had a broken window. So it's the same thing. It's like if you leave a job site a mess, like everyone's just like, well, it's already a mess, so like me leaving my trash there is not a big deal. You know, you have to set that stage for some people, and everyone has to be on the same page. And when it does become a mess, call attention to it and get it cleaned up. Because if you make sure you're cleaning it up, everyone behind that's going to clean it up. So I mean, really, that's how we deal with it. And then as far as managing tools, materials, and installment fixtures, we actually store a lot of our finishes off site before they're ready to go on site. So if we're fabricating millwork here in the shop and it's not ready to be on site, we'll put it in our storage unit. If we get tile and tile is not ready to be on site, it goes in the storage unit. We're cataloging all that stuff, writing down what it is. We use Build a Trend for our project management software. We actually have a job created in there called storage unit. So when something goes to the storage unit, we're logging it. We're taking a photo of it. We're putting it in there as a log, letting everyone know that, hey, we dropped off this tile. It's labeled for this job, and this is how much is in there. And that way we're tracking it, and we know where it is at all times. And it only gets on site when we absolutely need it on site to help protect those. Because you're absolutely right, like bringing a bathtub on site that's not ready to go in, it's probably going to get damaged. And then from site protection, same thing. We have an allowance dedicated to that. You know, finishes, we want to make sure we're putting down floor protection. It's in our schedule. 3 days after the floor finish, guys go in there, spend a half a day protecting all the floors, because that's, you know, if it's final coated, it's final coated. There's no more saving that. You know, you got to protect it right from that point all the way to delivery. You don't have another chance. So carving out time, carving out an allowance in the budget, and just really setting the stage. You know, the more the cleaner the job is, the cleaner the job stays. Got another question here. You seem to operate on the notion that a client is paying cash for the entire project as you bill them monthly, referring to episode 16. Do any of these clients finance their project, and if so, do you adjust billing to coincide with bank draws? Most lenders don't do 30-day draws, but progress draws. The progress points could be 45 or even 60 days. Great question, and we've actually dealt with that before. We're typically get involved with the bank because they're going to be doing inspections. We want to introduce ourselves, explain our process, and make sure that what they're going to need from us, maybe we've adapted our spreadsheet to give the information that they need. But we're still looking for that deposit, and sometimes that deposit is funded by a client. Sometimes the bank, we have to negotiate with the bank. There's certainly times where there's a negotiation. Most of the time, it doesn't work against us. As far as the 45 to 60 days, usually, at least in our experience, is that the bank gives you X amount of draws. So say it's 10 draws, but the project's going to be 12 months long. We might ask up front saying, hey, we'd like to add 2 more draw schedules to that, and maybe there's a charge for that, a few $100s. It would be worth us to pay the few $100s to make sure that we're paid on the frequency that we need. And then we're just scheduling those inspections maybe the week ahead that we know we're going to be in a spot where he or she can come out, photograph the job site, and then process the draw. So yeah, there's times where there might be a little bit more of a lag. So we're just trying to account that in the front end. So make sure we're taking the deposit necessary. And if you guys want to know how we take a construction deposit, go back to episode 16. We dig into it then. But we make sure we're just backing that into our deposit and then making sure that we're adjusting our draw schedule. But the biggest thing that they need is the information, you know, communicated the same way that they're portraying it to the client. So that's really where we've tripped up before, is that our spreadsheet, our draw schedule doesn't match the bank's draw schedule. So we've had to make basically, what do they call it in Excel? Not in a formula, well, just a VLOOKUP. No, not a VLOOKUP, that's new. Either way, we're basically making another sheet that pulls the data from our sheet into a sheet that matches their format, so we can then send it off to the bank. And we send that to the bank and the client so they can look at it, and then they usually say, hey, Nick, can we come out for an inspection? They come and do an inspection, process it, and it's never taken more than a few weeks for us. In the case that it would, again, I would just recommend that you try to plan for that and work with the bank and figure out how to fund the project in a timely manner, and maybe that deposit goes into an account that protects that money, so you can draw from the deposit account as well as the construction draw. But I find that most banks are willing to work with you as long as the money is protected and you're doing everything. You're getting your lien waivers signed, waivers signed, things like that. As long as you're kind of following the rules, we've been able to negotiate some of those things. So we've been lucky so far. I'm going to answer one more. So with the example of $100,000, again, episode 16, how would you work allowances and contingencies into this? Can you talk about how these typically work in your renovations cost plus contracts? Do you always recommend to the client to set aside a contingency percentage on every project? I do, and they don't have to communicate that. Obviously, like, we're gonna look at something, we might say, hey, it's a renovation, I would set aside 10, 15%, or maybe it's like, we're looking at like, hey, I would really set aside 20% because there's a lot of unknowns that we don't, that we're cautious on. But yeah, you definitely want, if you're a homeowner and you're listening to this and you're gonna be starting to do a renovation, be upfront about how much you're willing to invest in a project. But yeah, keep a little contingency in there, because ultimately, depending on the size of the project, you always end up spending a little bit more. And I would say if you're gonna hold this kind of like piggy bank of money, say 10%. Consider 10% contingency for things that you might upgrade throughout the project. That way, it's like when you get to your master bathroom and you want to do some upgrades, you can. Like, you have this contingency fund to pull from because you've been planning for that. But in our contract, that contingency isn't always necessarily reflected. We'll add it there just so it's there and they have an understanding of like, hey, this is the project plus your contingency, so this is how much right now we're tracking to spend. If it's a bank funded job, they'll want that contingency to draw from when you run into unforeseen issues or possible upgrades. As far as allowances, and what was the other thing? Yeah, allowances, same thing. We're gonna call that out as an allowance. We're gonna explain right up front that, hey, this is an exposure to you, this is an allowance. We have $10,000 in the budget for countertops. We're assuming that it's a $75 per square foot material, so install is probably roughly double that. We're going to communicate that, but and try to figure, basically try to communicate what our assumptions are. We want to be putting realistic numbers in this budget, but also communicating what the assumption is. Because if we're communicating that we have $75 per square foot for material for counters, we want to make sure that we're assuming that it's a, I don't know, a Caesar stone, blah, blah, blah. Where instead, like, in their mind, they're like, oh, well, I want Calcutta gold. Well, that doesn't line up. If we don't communicate that and then all of a sudden Calcutta gold comes in at $200 a square foot, they're like, well, why were you assuming $75 a square foot? Well, it's because I was assuming this product. So being upfront with your assumptions and outlining those things is really important. Same thing, with any material like appliances. Hey, what are you assuming for appliances? Well, I'm assuming 10 grand. Well, what does that get me? Or I'm assuming 30 grand. Okay, well, what does that get me? They want to know what you're assuming, and when you're able to communicate that, hey, I'm assuming a Sub-Zero and Wolf package for a kitchen this size. Oh, okay, we're on the same page. Or I'm assuming marble countertops. We're on the same page. Or I'm assuming inset cabinetry. You want to make sure that you're assuming the things that they are also assuming. So when they review that, if they weren't assuming quartz and they were assuming Calcutta gold, they can flag and say, hey, I know you get $75 a square foot, but I'm thinking Calcutta gold. Can we up that so we can be more accurate? So again, this goes back to what I say all the time, communication. If you can outline your assumptions, outline what those allowances are covering, it's going to put you in a world of a better place when you're presenting pricing, especially early on in a project. As always, guys, if you dig these coffee breaks, make sure you let us know. You can leave a comment you can leave a question in the comments below on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast, drop us a review. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next week.